wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic podcast. This is Steve coming to you from Conway, Arkansas. We're going to look at chapters 18, 19, and 20 of the Enchiridion this week. These are chapters that have to do with our impressions, reevaluating our values, and slowing our response to others so we don't get so angry. How to keep our anger in check. Now, before I do that, I want to remind you that I have a small hoard of Sunday Stoic Challenge coins. These are a coin you can carry in your pocket to remind you of Stoic values. They have the show logo on the front, but instead of saying Sunday Stoic, it says Carpe Diem. And on the back, it says some things are in our power, others are not, and persist and resist. I have those on Etsy, and there's a link in the show notes. Right now, I only have them available to U.S. customers because it's a pain to fill out all the customs forms to ship them overseas, and I haven't had time to do that. But I may make that available for all of you in across the pond here soon. But right now, it's available to U.S. customers. So I'd love to sell those out. I bought 50. I've sold, I don't know, 15 or 20 so far. I've given some to patrons, but I'd like to get rid of those. So please, don't make my wife mad by making me keep those in the house for too much longer. Yeah. Anyway, so Epictetus, as you know, was a slave. He had his leg mangled, presumably by his master. Perhaps it was a birth defect. We aren't sure, but the legend goes he was being tortured and saying, "Master, if you press on my leg much further, it's going to snap." And then crack, his leg broke, and he said, "See, I told you," in this calm manner that I don't think I could muster. And he had a limp from then on. So he was a slave. He had a limp. He knew hardship. And while a slave, he got to study Stoicism and eventually became a teacher of Stoicism. And that's why we have these sayings from him today. He didn't write any books of his own, as far as we know, but his student, Arian, took notes. And presumably, their notes, they could have some of Arian's thoughts mixed in as well. But we get the discourses of Epictetus from that. And then we have the handbook, the Enchiridion, which we're reading from in this series. These are like distilled lessons from the discourses. These are things you can memorize, essentially. As we learned from Dr. Nancy Sherman the other day, James Stockdale memorized the Enchiridion and would recite it to himself while he was a prisoner of war. What a challenge that would be, huh? To memorize the Enchiridion. I don't know if I'm up for that quite yet. So we are going to hear 3 readings from Epictetus this week. And then we'll talk about ways we might interpret and apply them to the modern era.
Chapter 18. When a raven croaks with evil omen, let not the impression carry you away, but straightway distinguish in your own mind and say, these portents mean nothing to me, but only to my bit of a body, or my bit of property, or name, or my children, or my wife. But for me all omens are favorable, if I will, for whatever the issue may be, it is in my power to get benefit therefrom. Chapter 19. You can be invincible if you never enter on a contest where victory is not in your power. Beware then, that when you see a man raised to honor, or great power, or high repute, you do not let your impression carry you away. For if the reality of good lies in what is in our power, there is no room for envy or jealousy, And you will not wish to be praetor, or prefect, or consul, but to be free. And there is but one way to freedom, to despise what is not in our power. Chapter 20. Remember that foul words or blows in themselves are no outrage, but your judgment that they are so. So when anyone makes you angry, know that it is your own thought that has angered you. Wherefore make it your first endeavor not to let your impressions carry you away. For if once you gain time and delay, you will find it easier to control yourself.
So in the first reading, Epictetus tells us that we shouldn't get too worried about omens, which is a weird thing to think about the hyper-rational Stoics being worried about. But they did engage in divination, thinking that they could determine future outcomes of current events, because everything's linked by a chain of cause and effect. If you can understand what's happening now, you might be able to predict what's happening in the future. And he says, so let's say you get an omen that your child's going to be sick, or you're going to lose your arm, or you're going to become sick or lose your job, or your spouse is going to leave you. What he's saying here is remind yourself that these are omens that essentially pertain to things outside your power, things that are not you. Your arm is not you. Your body is not you. Only your will is you. Your possessions, your family, these are things that are not you, and were always outside your power, and you were always going to lose them. That's the fate of being alive. That's the, you're going to lose everything at some point. But he says that we can reframe this omen, this what would be seen as a bad omen. We can reframe it and do like Marcus Aurelius would later say, the obstacle becomes the way. He says, look at it, remind yourself that this is not a problem with your will, with where the true good lies, and your ability to work with impressions to make decisions. This has to do with things that are not part of you and are not in your power. So it's outside the realm of things that we have to get too upset about. And he says, and also think about what benefit you may be able to derive from this omen or from this change that's about to happen. The obstacle becomes the way. Okay, there's something that's changing. What benefit might I gain from it? Now, it's harder to think about that when you think about losing a family member. I've always despised it when a family member dies and people come crawling up like vultures around the casket, hoping to inherit something. And I don't think that's what he's talking about here, because once again, inheritance are things beyond your power. But what internal benefit, what improvement might you make upon your character, or what justice might you be able to give out to those around you based on what's about to happen? What benefit can be gleaned from the situation? In the next reading, he says we can be invincible if we only enter into contests that are testing things within our power. So he doesn't mean you can become superhuman and a super stoic and enter into the Olympics and beat everyone at pole vaulting. What he is saying here is if you let go of external things, the things that are not in your power, wealth, fame, winning that race, promotions. If you despise them. Now, despise is a weird word. I think despise to me seems more cynical in the classical sense. Like, I do not want any of these things. But we don't put much weight on them. We don't give them much elevation. We are indifferent to them is my preferred term. So if we are indifferent to these things, then we won't be chasing them. We won't be trying to impress everyone all the time. Those are contests we can't win. But instead, we can have contests in the sense of, I want to become a better person. And once again, let's remember that doesn't just mean improving yourself for the sake of yourself. It's improving yourself for the sake of others. I want to improve myself. I want to do things that could improve my community. Notice I put a could in there, a Stoic a clause in there to remind myself it may not work out. But we set ourselves up with goals that are more based on our will rather than on external outcomes. And then we can become invincible. And the last reading, he talks about anger. If someone makes you angry, you need to remember that it is you who made you angry, not them. Their words are simply vibrations in the air, picked up by your tympanic membrane and transferred by further signals into your brain. You add the meaning after you interpret them in your brain. You add the meaning to them and the story and the reasons why you should be hurt or not hurt by what they've said. The Stoics say that's up to you. That's your doing. And so, if you can remember to put that little pause in there to think about your impressions. Epictetus is all about impressions and externals and internals, as it were. Things in your power and things that are not, and your impressions, which are all similar ideas here. But if you receive this signal, you don't have any control over what they said. But what do you have control over? How you take it, how you interpret it, what you do with it. But you can't have that control if you don't practice a little bit of what we might call mindfulness. Practicing putting a pause between receiving information and making judgments on that information. Assenting to impressions, as Epictetus would say. Making those judgments, saying, oh, that's bad. Go, wait a minute. Old me would have said, oh, that's bad. But I am going to be somewhat indifferent about this. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they are just uneducated. Maybe they're right. And we roll with it that way. I like to think of it this way. He says people don't make you mad. You make you mad. So imagine you are standing on a street corner. It's a lovely summer day. Pretty warm, actually. Boy, it's warm out. And you're standing on the street corner, and there is another individual walking by. And on the ground, outside of a restaurant there on the street, is, I don't know, a sandwich. I like to think of a burrito, like a big filled burrito full of beans and rice and guacamole and sour cream and whatever else you want on that burrito. But it's been sitting in the sun for hours and hours and hours on the sidewalk. That person picks up the burrito, looks at you, and throws it at you. Bop! It smacks you on the chest. You have just been hit by a gross, hot, spoiled burrito. Okay? That is equivalent to them giving you an insult. Now, what could you do? You could go, oh, well, that sucks. I better go wash off. Okay? That's the Stoic way. But what do we normally do? We pick up that burrito and we eat it. Right? We eat it and then we get sick. Oh, I got food poisoning. That person gave me food poisoning. Why did that person give me food poisoning? That person didn't give you food poisoning. You gave you food poisoning. You didn't have to eat the burrito. Right? You didn't have to assent to the impression that their words gave you. They insulted you. You let that insult in. That's what the Stoics are saying. You're the one who brought it into your soul, into your inner being. You could have just received the information and left it alone. You don't have to have an opinion. You don't have to assent to an impression. You can go, okay, whatever, dude. That's letting the burrito hit you and fall to the ground. But when you say, "Oh, how dare you, sir? You have insulted me. We shall have a duel," right? That kind of thing. That's when you get hit by the burrito, pick it up, and you eat it. You let it in, and now you're sick because that thing's been laying in the sun all day. And now you're going to have problems. And you'll blame that person. Why did that person give me food poisoning? Well, that person did not. You gave you food poisoning. You didn't have to let it in. Okay, so we need to learn to try to figure out how to gain benefit from whatever happens, no matter how bad it may seem to an outsider. What benefit can we glean from any circumstance? How can we turn problems into solutions? We need to realign our values to internal circumstances so that we are not jealous, so that we are essentially invincible in the sense that everything we try to do, the main point of everything we try to do is maintain our equanimity, is to attempt to practice virtue rather than gain material wealth, gain power, etc. And we need to remember that we have to challenge our impressions and get into the habit of challenging our impressions all the time, because otherwise we are like puppets on a string, and the insults of others will affect us deeply if we don't take control of our own lives. All right, everyone. Hey, pick up one of those coins if you wish. If I can figure out how to put a coupon code to save you some money on that Etsy coin, I'll put it in the show notes. Otherwise, thank you for listening to the Sunday Stoic podcast. My name is Steve. If you want to reach out to me, email me, sundaystoic@gmail.com. And until next time, Carpe Diem.
Thank you for listening to the Sunday Stoic. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the Sunday Stoic on iTunes. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team, earn rewards, and be an integral part of the show by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com. To find out more, visit www.sundaystoicpodcast.com. And as Steve always says, Carpe Diem.